This is the Untold Italy travel podcast, and you're listening to episode number 179.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week, your host, Katie Clark, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and, of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Buongiorno, everyone, or should I say chin chin. Today we're starting a new series on Italian wine with my good friends and really the beating heart of my extended family in Italy and Rome, Olivia Windsor and Andrea Mitti. If you've been listening to our podcast for a while, Olivia's voice will be familiar to you as she's appeared on many episodes about Piedmont and also about formaggio or cheese, for which we share a big passion. Olivia is also the amazing leader of many of our Untold Italy tours and has a myriad of talents. But today we're going to chat about one of our other passions, wine, together with her partner, Andrea. This is the beginning of a series of episodes about Italian wine with Liv and Andrea that you'll hear in the coming months and years. There is a lot to unpack about Italian wine because not only is it delicious, but winemaking and the vendemmia or grape harvest is an extremely important part of Italian culture and has significance not only in each region, but on each hilltop and community where wine has been made for centuries. First up, we're chatting about Italian sparkling wine. Most of us know Prosecco, but perhaps some of the other varieties you may not be aware of, or you may have relegated to some bad memories in the 1970s and 80s. Well, I love Italian sparkling wine, and I've had my eyes and taste buds awakened recently, so let's hear all about it from Liv and Andrea. Benvenuta, welcome back to the Untold Italy podcast, Liv, and benvenuto, welcome for the first time, Andrea.
Hi, grazie, Katie.
Oh, it's so exciting to have you here now, Liv. Most of our listeners have heard your voice many times, and I've just explained that you're part of my very special Italian family. But you're here on the podcast today to talk about something that we all love, and that's wine. So perhaps we should backtrack a little and get you to tell your story and how you and Andrea came to know so much about Italian wine and really wanted to make it a focus of your life at the moment and your studies and everything.
Thanks, Katie. So as you said, we're Andrea and Olivia, an Italian-Australian couple and the founders of Italian Wine Tales, which is a new online website all about Italian wine. We're launching wine guides on all of the regions of Italy, information on where to go wine tasting or on wine tours, and just general advice like, you like this kind of wine, why don't you drink this? We know that the wine world can be a little intimidating at times, a bit stuffy, and even sometimes a bit boring. So we decided to help change that by creating an online resource all about Italian wine, like a one-on-one guide, but in a fun and approachable way. A bit of background on me, in case you don't know me. I've been living in Italy for the last 4 years, and I'm really passionate about food and wine, and in fact, the host of many of the Untold Italy tours. In Australia, I studied the WSET course, or Wine and Spirit Education Trust, which is regarded as one of the world's leading providers of wine education. When I moved to Italy, I worked on some wineries in Tuscany and in Piedmont, where I also did my first wine harvest. In Italy, I've become really interested in organic wines or even just small wineries that are all about quality, not quantity. And together with Andrea, I really wanted to deepen my knowledge of Italian wines specifically. So we decided to start the ICE, or the Association of Italian Sommelier course.
Hi, I'm Andrea, and I am originally from Piedmont, where I first met Olivia. I've worked in restaurants before for some years, but I've always felt a connection with wine. And the reason can be partially attributed to the fact that my family comes from the Langhe wine region, where Barolo and Barbaresco are made. And I've fallen in love with those fables-like rolling hills since I was a little kid. And therefore, I decided to start the AAS course with Liv because I felt this duty to keep alive the heritage of my own region and to know as much as possible about wine. And then while taking the classes, we started to realize just how much there is to know about wine and about Italian wine in particular. But as Liv said, how intimidating all of this can be. For example, did you know that in Italy alone, there are at least 350 grape varieties and that the wine has been made here for 4,000 years? So the idea for Italian Wine Tales came up class after class, and here we are now.
Oh, it's amazing. And I was so privileged to go with your mum, Andrea, to one of the wineries that was a connection to your family. And she was really, really thrilled to be able to see that winery where I think her grandfather or her had been playing, and yeah, it was really, really lovely. And Liv, I'm so in awe that you're doing this study, especially in Italian. It's so technical. Brava, well done.
Thank you. With Andrea's help, of course.
For our listeners, I've been extremely lucky to be the beneficiary of some excellent wine selection from both of these two. So it seems only fair to share it with all of you, if only virtually. So today we wanted to have a bit of a chat about sparkling Italian wines, and I think everyone knows Prosecco, but there's so much more to the story than that. So shall we clink our virtual glasses and get started? And perhaps you can explain to the listeners what sparkling wine is.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we love sparkling wine, me especially. And I guess there are a few different categories of sparkling wine. So you might have heard of spumante, vini frizzanti, there's sparkling aromatic wine, there's sweet sparkling wine. And basically what they all have in common is that they're made from a first or a second alcoholic fermentation. So that can come from fresh grapes, grape must, or wine itself. What they all have in common is that they release carbon dioxide when you open the bottle, so hence the bubbles. Yep, pop, exactly. And a little technical, but, we won't go too technical, but they have bars of pressure. So they're normally 3 bars of pressure, and they have a certain alcoholic strength that varies between, spumante or a metodo classico, but, that's just a very general definition.
I think most people, when they think of Italian sparkling wine, they think of Prosecco, right? And yes. Prosecco is very widely known across the world, and it's got a bit of a funny reputation, I think, because I think the French, I don't want to get too political here, Andrea, just relax, because but I think the French have done a very good job of making sure that champagne is very well regarded as a luxury item and probably the pinnacle of sparkling wine. But in fact, Italian sparkling wines have a very long and amazing history, that unfortunately they didn't really keep up with the marketing. So I think this is a really great discussion because we're going to go into the different types of sparkling wine. And, it's probably not maybe what a lot of people may have tried in the past. I know one of the first alcoholic beverages I tried was actually spumante. And let me tell you, I don't think that's what we're going to be talking about now. But anyway, go on and tell us about spumante.
So spumante literally means, as the word says, something that has the spuma, which is the bubbles and fizziness that you get once you open the bottle and pour the wine into the glass. 375 million bottles of Italian spumante are made every year, especially in the northern regions. And as you can expect, Italy and France are the top producer of sparkling wine in general.
But spumante, is it a sweet wine, or is it, how would you describe that wine?
Yes, I would describe it as typically associated as a sweet wine and to have with sweet food, typically with the dessert that you have at the end of the meal.
You can find dry versions as well.
Exactly. Not the best of the sparkling wine, as you said. I agree with that. There are better qualities of sparkling wines that we can discuss. But it's an easy wine to start to get to know the sparkling wines, I think.
Yeah, because I think this is actually a really funny story that I was gifted a bottle of Asti and I just completely forgot that it was quite sweet. And it was really funny because Julie, who was on our tour in Puglia last year, was over and we were having opened this wine and I was like, oh, it was at the start of the meal and it was so sweet. We were like, oh no, this is not right. We can't have that. So one of the important things where unfortunately, we had to not drink that because we weren't in the right eating mode for that wine. And I think this is a really important point, is that when we talk about Italian wine, it's always with respect to food. So we're not really drinking wine on its own as a contemplative style that some of the other more famous wines, and we're always going to be eating food. And I think that's probably why we love it so much.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So shall we go and talk about Prosecco?
Of course, we can start from Prosecco. The wine takes its name from a little town in the Friuli Venezia Giulia region called, in fact, Prosecco, but now it's associated with a nearby region, Veneto, where it's now massively produced and way more popular.
Mm-hmm.
It is perhaps one of, if not the most well-known Italian wine abroad, and 180 million bottles out of the 300 million that are produced every year are exported. If you're interested into about the aromas and the taste, you will find pear, apple, citrus, white flowers, bit of beautiful wisteria, and sometimes even peach and apricot. It can be interesting also to know how Prosecco is made. Prosecco is made mostly from the Prosecco and Moscato grapes, and it's done using the Martinotti Charmat method, which is a peculiar name derived from two surnames. The first one is from this wine producer from Asti in Piemonte, which was called Martinotti, and the first one to invent this method. And the second from the Frenchman, which patented it first. And so the two surnames created this method, the name for the method. And to quickly sum it up, this method, the thing that you need to know is that it's fermented twice, and both fermentation happen in stainless steel vats.
Yeah, that's very different to champagne, isn't it? It's a very different method because in that case, the fermentation happens in the bottle and it produces a very different effect. And I think that's, we do love Prosecco because it's very light and it's summery and it's, you know, in a lot of ways, it's a little bit easier to drink sometimes than champagne, or it's a little less complex, but that's fine. And that's amazing because it goes really well with foods like seafood. And also you can mix it with other drinks too.
Spritz.
Yeah, and it's an easy aperitivo wine to start the night.
Exactly. But there's Prosecco and there's Prosecco as well. So like there's the supermarket Prosecco, which, you probably want to mix that because it's not so tasty to drink by itself. It might give you a terrible headache. Yes. And then there's the really good Prosecco, which we want everyone here to be, you know, learning about that and drinking that one. So Andrea's got some tips on how you can find that too.
We would recommend, if your budget allows it, to go for the Valdobbiadene Superiore di Cartizze, DOCG. And just to clarify, since you might be looking at many labels, Italian labels, when looking for a good Prosecco, you might wonder what DOCG stands for, and it literally translates to Controlled and Guaranteed Denomination of Origin, which is a guarantee for you that this wine has been produced following strict rules. And as well, Superiore, it means it is a wine produced with higher quality obtained through stricter regulation.
Yeah, so that's the best one from that Cartizze, the area. So you probably don't want to use that one to mix into your spritz. That's the one that you'd be having for your glass of Prosecco and really enjoying that glass.
And I think it's the thing about Prosecco is there's a lot of complicated Italian names. So what's the region again that we're looking for? Say it slowly this time.
So the name is Valdobbiadene Superiore di Cartizze, DOCG.
I love it. It sounds really great when you say it.
Cartizze.
Exactly.
It's the key word. And there's two other ones that they're still like very good quality, not the top, but still worth looking out for if you can't find that one, which
Yes.
are
Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG and Asolo Prosecco Superiore DOCG.
Okay. We're going to put all of these names in the show notes because when Andrea says it, it sounds amazing. When I say it sounds terrible. When Liv says it, it sounds amazing too. But yeah, we'll definitely put all the names in the show notes so you can know what to look for. But this area is so beautiful around Treviso. It's a really nice area. You can actually visit there. There are day trips from Venice actually that you can do, but I totally recommend spending a little bit more time around that area because it's very beautiful.
Stunning, absolutely. And we've got some wineries that people might be interested to go and
nearby
visit.
Treviso, in fact.
Yeah, slightly bigger ones that, speak English, a little bit more commercial because, of course, the smaller family-run wineries are harder to visit. And, you really need to go with a group tour. For example, on our Untold Italy tours, we like to visit smaller wineries, but these are some options for wineries that you can visit as individuals or in a couple or with some friends.
We would definitely recommend Villa Sandi or otherwise Sorelle Bronca or, again, Belle Caselle.
And are they all in the same kind of area? So you could perhaps, do a little day of it.
Exactly,
so just for people that don't know, Treviso is in the north and this area is maybe about an hour and a half out of Venice, which is why it makes like a day trip as well. And I would highly recommend spending time in Treviso as well as that wine area. It's very beautiful and they also have sparkling wine. I mean, amazing. What's not to love? And now there's another region that's fairly close by to there too, right? And this is actually my favourite and this is it's new, but it's a very special wine, right?
Exactly. Franciacorta in nearby Lombardy. And yeah, that's me and Katie are good friends because we like similar things as well. So Franciacorta I love. And that's the Metodo Classico method. So different to Prosecco, the second fermentation happens inside the bottle. So Prosecco, it's happening all in stainless steel tanks. Franciacorta in the bottle. So that's why it's often compared to champagne. You might hear it referred to as Italy's version of champagne. They're both their own separate drinks, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, the similarity is the way that they're produced. So Franciacorta, it's a delicious bubbly wine. It's very sophisticated and elegant, a little bit heavier, as you were saying, Katie, than the Prosecco. It's got really delicious, sense of butter and vanilla and citrus, white flowers on the palate and on the nose. Yeah, it's really tasty. I love Franciacorta, but it is, a heavier style of wine than the Prosecco.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more expensive because of the different method, because you can imagine to get the taste and the bubbliness, this is my technical terms, right, in the bottle as opposed to in a vat is going to be quite a different thing altogether. So let's just have a chat about where Franciacorta region is because, Italian wine is very focused on the region, and this is when Andrea said about the DOCG, it's about the region and the method of the way the wine is produced. So you can't just go around calling anything Franciacorta because it's not going to be from the correct region.
Yeah, if you want to visit Franciacorta, you have to go to Lombardy near the town of Brescia. It's incastonated between Brescia and Lake Iseo. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful there. And this part of Italy is peculiar because the wind coming down from the Camonica Valley mix with the warmer air that is over Lake Iseo. So even in winter, there is not much fog there. So there is not much humidity. And this is why Franciacorta is such a peculiar product that can only be found and cultivated in that specific area.
Yeah, I was there last year and it is beautiful, that area. It's a small area too, a very small area compared to
5,000 hectares, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, it's very small and it's just stunning. It's well worth the trip and visiting a few wineries in Franciacorta.
Yeah, now Brescia isn't very well known, but this is a city that I absolutely love. It's so cool. It's got like years and years of history all in like one little pocket, but its closest place it's near to is probably that people would know is probably Lake Garda. So if you're heading to Lake Garda, this is a great area to head around. It's wedged between Milan and Venice.
Nice little wine trip around there.
Well, you could do like the Prosecco bit if you're coming from Venice and then stop off at Franciacorta and, you know, compare and contrast. I mean, I'm totally up for that. Oh, that's an idea, isn't it?
Delicious. Chin chin.
Chin chin. And are there some wineries you'd recommend stopping off in the Franciacorta region?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year I was in a beautiful family-run winery that speak English and they can organise picnics in the vineyard. It's called Mosnell, and that's a really lovely one to visit. Otherwise, a more famous, little bit more commercial that you might have heard is Ca del Bosco. And finally, Bella Vista. That's another really nice winery, and they've got a range of different tours at different price points as well and different timings that you can choose.
And you can book in on those on the website?
Yeah. And the benefit of those, all three, is that they offer the website in English too. So it's just really easy to make your experience.
Yeah. Liv and I like to find the small ones, but it comes with its own little challenges in terms of lack of information. I mean, it's so worthwhile understanding and getting that real family connection to these wineries, but you need to really have a really good command of Italian, and you need to have a tenacity that is only known to Liv. Who's really, really voracious in finding these wines. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. I mean, I love Franciacorta. Thank you for that. And did you have something else?
Yeah, we've got a few tips if you want to find a really good Franciacorta. The first one, understand if you want something dry or sweet. So when it comes to the process of making Franciacorta, we're not going to get too technical, but basically they need to add what's known as dosage, so a little bit of sugar at some stage. So that means there's a whole different scale of sweetness in Franciacorta. So you might want to get familiar. If you don't like sweet wine, or you want your diet Franciacorta, go for the Padosse, which is the least amount of sugar in the Franciacorta. I mean, I probably prefer an extra brut or a brut, which is a dry. But if you like sweet wine, they've got that for you too. So you can go for the dolce, which has got, 50 grams per litre of sugar. So that's quite sweet. So that would be my first tip. My second, if your budget allows, always choose a millesimato Franciacorta. It essentially means that all of the grapes used are from the same vintage, the same year, rather than a mix from all different years in the Franciacorta. It's just a higher quality product. Third tip, and really important, on the bottle of your Franciacorta, they will have the year that it's produced as well as the spoccatura. Technical term, you just need to know that when that happens, basically you want to drink the wine between 6 to 18 months after the date of the spoccatura. So just have a look on the bottle. It'll be somewhere that date, because essentially once the spoccatura happens, which is when they add the sugar that we were talking about before, they reopen the bottle, add a bit of sugar and some other secret elements that differ from each producer, the quality of the wine starts to slowly go down. So you don't want to keep Franciacorta after that date for years and years and years, because it's just a shame. The quality doesn't
That's
improve.
Good to know. And I mean, not that would last long in our house, but no one's going to be going around cellaring that one. But, it's good to know. You don't want to – sometimes people hold on to bottles for special occasions, and that'd be a real shame, wouldn't it? Because you'd be like, oh, good tip. Thank you.
Exactly, no worries. And the last thing I'd say about Franciacorta is there's a few different other kinds that you can get. So not talking about sugar, just the kind of varieties of Franciacorta. You can get the rosé. So if you like rosé, go for that. My favorite is the Satin, which is extra creamy. It's made just using white grapes. It's been on the lees, so the yeast, for longer. There's the Millesimati that I mentioned before. Again, that stays on the lees for longer, so creamy, creamy, creamy. All there is the creme de la creme, the Riserva. So that spends the longest amount of time aging on the leaves.
And what sort of grapes do they use for Franciacorta, Liv?
The grapes that they use for Franciacorta are Chardonnay, absolutely, Pinot Nero, occasionally. So I mentioned that the Sartène only uses white grapes, so it wouldn't use Pinot Nero there. And they use a little bit of Pinot Bianco. But interestingly, they are experimenting with some indigenous grapes, native to the area that they're trying to bring back. And one of them is called Erba Mate. So you might see that in some way.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well. So just heading back to Prosecco for a bit, they use different grapes for Prosecco, don't they? Which ones do they use up there?
The main grape that they use for Prosecco, the one that is mostly used, is Glera, and it's important to use that because that's the grape that is directly associated with the production of Prosecco.
So again, It comes down to the method and the region and all of those things. And it's really interesting, I don't pretend to know anything about wine really, but I do find the whole process of how just passionate people are about their local area and understanding not only the terrain just at a macro level, but at a micro level. So they will know that the grapes from one side of the hill are going to produce a different effect to ones on the other side of the hill because of the wind, as you said, Andrea, and also the soil composition and just the attention to detail on that. I just find absolutely incredible. It's just a commitment to understanding the land and what's being produced from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, now what other sparklings have you got for us?
Well, being from Piemonte, I have to advocate for Asti Spumante and Moscato d'Asti, of course. Asti Spumante is produced using the Martinotti method, of course, being from Asti, and the grape is 100% Moscato Bianco. Mm-hmm. The wine is, of course, a white sparkling with fine and persistent bubbles, hints of fruits and flowers, such as peach and wisteria, a refreshing sweet taste, but well-balanced with desserts. Moscato d'Asti, instead, has many characteristics in common with Asti Spumante, but differs on other ways. So it's a sweet wine, and you can maybe think about it as a wine cousin of Asti Spumante. They are both made using the Martinotti method. It's produced in the area around Asti, and it derives entirely from the Moscato Bianco grape. You will find aromas of agrumes and aromatic plants, although in the mouth it's well balanced with a mixture of sweetness and sapidity. Although similar, these two wines have some differences. For example, Asti Spumante, as the name says, is a spumante, and Moscato d'Asti, on the other hand, is a vino frizzante. And furthermore, Moscato generally has more sugar, while Asti Spumante is more sparkling.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know Moscato. That's another one. Unfortunately, some of these wines haven't had the best reputation outside of Italy, which is a real shame. And we'll talk about one in particular that's had a really terrible reputation. But I think what people need to understand is that some producers perhaps saw an opportunity to maybe make quite a bit of money, and they started mass producing a lot of these wines to take advantage of international interest. And unfortunately, it did have a big impact on some of the reputations of these wines, which is completely unfair because you're not going to be drinking a Moscato, right, as your pre-dinner drink. Like, this is not what you do. And if you're Italian, you would, like Andrea, you would be looking for, a really beautiful wine that would match to your food. So it's not, we've got it all wrong, like we got these like mass-produced wines that ended up being very cheap as well. And so people thought, oh, we'll give that. And it's very sad actually, because this is not what Italian wine's about. And this is why I wanted you to come on here to explain just how broad the industry is, but also just how important it is to local people and also to the culture just generally. So what are we eating with our Asti Spumante?
Well, Asti Spumante, of course, goes perfectly with good desserts. If you have cakes or if you have some panettone, esatto, during Christmas period, it goes perfectly. Everything related to pastries. You definitely can go with a spumante or also with a moscato.
Yeah.
So that's your go-to food, of course. I wouldn't have it, for example, for an aperitivo, like as we said before, for the Prosecco. It's not the right wine.
Yeah, it's a bit sweet.
Yes.
Liv, the other day you posted a lovely dessert that I saw, which was custard, I think, with those baby strawberries on top, the wild strawberries. I think that would go very nicely with the Asti.
Great suggestion. Or maybe I'll have to go and order that again to enjoy a moscato.
Yes.
That looked so good. I wonder where that was. It might be one of our favourite restaurants in Rome, huh?
Exactly.
It did look a little bit familiar. Okay, all right. So we've had our pre-dinner drinks with our Franciacorta and our Prosecco, and then we've had our dessert wine. Something in the middle, maybe?
Yes, a little something red maybe that has a bad reputation abroad, unfortunately. Lambrusco, so from the Emilia-Romagna region, mainly in Emilia because it's produced around Modena. Yeah, and it's a really delicious wine. It's a red sparkling. It's the most famous red sparkling in Italy, but unfortunately hasn't always had the best reputation. It's produced in a few different ways. So, Andrea was explaining before about the Martinotti Charmat method. The higher quality ones, though, are generally produced using either the Metodo Classico method, so similar to Franciacorta, Champagne, or another way known as the ancestral method, which is essentially the fermentation happens, just one fermentation and in the bottle. So they seal the bottle before the fermentation is finished. And so that's, the higher quality wines are produced that way rather than in the stainless steel vats. Lambrusco is made with the Lambrusco grape. There are tons of different varieties of Lambrusco grapes, but the most well-known are Salamino, Grasparossa, Sorbara, Marani, and Maestri. They've all got slightly different characteristics, but something that is similar across them all. They've got the beautiful ruby red colour, the bubbles, and some of them, more bubbles than others. They've got red berries, currants, blueberry aromas. They're nice and fresh and light, perfect with some of the cuisine from Emilia, like the cured meats, the affettati. They've got this lovely, refreshing aftertaste of sour cherry. And I love Lambrusco. I think it's a delicious wine.
Well, this was my discovery last year, wasn't it? The year before that, it was the year of Pecorino, and now I'm on the Lambrusco. But my mind was blown. I had no idea. Again, like Lambrusco in Australia, and I'm sure in the United States, has not the greatest reputation. And I found out why that is. And I mean, again, this mass production is part of the problem, but also people not understanding how to drink it or what to drink it with. My understanding is this one, it's not hanging around for very long. You need to drink it pretty quickly. I think it's within 6 to 12 months, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Exactly. So maybe by the time it was getting to Europe.
So if you're sending it on a boat, or like a whole few pallets on a boat,
Exactly.
Australia would have been just terrible.
You have to enjoy it.
Exactly. And that's half the fun, right? That's why we're going there, to try all these different wines. And it does this it's really fresh, and it really cuts through. Like, a lot of the food in that region is very rich and delicious, and there's a lot of cured meats like prosciutto, and it's very rich, and it's dense in like rich flavors. The Parmigiano Reggiano, it just goes perfectly with that, because you've got the creaminess of the cheese and the bit of the sharpness of the cheese as well, and then you've got this bubbly wine. And I'm thinking of my next aperitivo party now.
Oh, exactly. And I do have a few tips if people want to find the really good Lambrusco and not be disappointed.
Great. Hit us up.
Right. Number one, the highest quality, as I was saying, you want to go for the Metodo Classico method, ideally. So look out for the cork of the bottle of Lambrusco that you're buying. You want it to look like a champagne cork, but instead of having, the wire cage that's normally around the cork of a champagne bottle, it's actually attached with a metal clamp. So that way you know that the wine's been produced using the Metodo ancestral or the classical method. So look for number one, the cork. Number two, look for Lambrusco di Sorbara DOC. So this is generally regarded as producing like the best Lambrusco wines in Emilia. So that's another one. And then again, if you don't want sweet Lambrusco, make sure that you're buying Secco. Secco is dry. If you do want sweet, on the other hand, go for the Dolce.
So did you leave some recommendations on some wineries to go to if you're in the Modena or Bologna region around there?
Indeed. So just an hour away from Bologna is a lovely winery called Cantina della Volta. Yeah, family run. They offer 4 different kinds of tours. Again, easy to book online in English. So that's a really lovely winery. Otherwise, if you're going to be near Modena, I'd recommend Chiarli. And that's set in a 19th century villa surrounded by the vineyards. You can do a tour, and you can even pair their tours there with some of the region's famous cured meats, which sounds like my kind of day.
Yeah, I could easily spend a day doing that. That would be so much fun. And with Lambrusco as well, again, it is more of that aperitivo style wine, isn't it? It's not something that you're going to be drinking with your ragu, your pasta ragu or your bolognese. You're probably going to keep that for your aperitivo, which I like. And for Australians that are listening, in Australia we have this tradition of sparkling Shiraz, which I'm actually not really a fan of. It's a bit heavy for me, but I do really love the Lambrusco because it's much lighter. So you can definitely try that. I think it's a good one.
Yes.
Wow.
Agree.
I mean, who knew there were so many sparkling wines in Italy? Is there any more?
Well, this is just really like a tiny smidge. I mean, there's sparkling rosé wines, which we've, mentioned within the world of Franciacorta and the world of Prosecco. Did you mention that, Prosecco rosé?
There is a new trend in Prosecco for Prosecco Rosé. In fact, there is a Prosecco Rosé DOC, which is a rather new DOC, and it's trending a lot. So if you like Prosecco, but also rosé wines, that definitely is your go-to wine.
Yeah, and I know in Australia and probably the US, it's definitely in the US as well, this trend of pet nat, which if you haven't heard of, is essentially the same as the method I was just describing about the ancestral method of producing sparkling wine. So the one fermentation that happens in the bottle. And so that's a trend in Italy too. So you can find lots of natural wines that are, naturally sparkling all throughout the region. So there's a really great one in Umbria that I love called Chinino, which
that's very
it's
good.
like a dialect word. So it's like a rosé pet nat.
Yeah.
And then again, there's so many other Metodo Classico wines that we haven't, had time to mention them all. There's Alta Langa in Piemonte, Trento DOC.
Yes.
I mean, we could be here for years,
This
Katie.
was just a brief introduction to the world of sparkling.
Yeah, well, they're the main ones. And I guess you'll probably find those ones, if people aren't going to those areas, which the ultimate is to go and really explore the areas where these wines are made. But not everyone has that opportunity. And most people, when they're going to their first trip to Italy, they might be interested in wine and learning a little bit more. Where we know we're going to Rome, Florence and Venice, where can we try these wines? Where's some good wine bars to try?
So we would definitely recommend in Rome Roscioli Rimessa as number one, and doing their wine and food paired dinner. That's just a really good one because you get to try about 6 different wines from all over the country, and they have a sommelier explaining each wine as you drink it. So that's a really good, if you're into learning a bit more about wine, that'd be my first choice.
Also in Rome, if you happen to be in the Testaccio neighborhood, we recommend Volpetti and da Corrado at the market. Beautiful selection of wines. The people there, it's very happy to explain all the different kind of wines and help you choose the one you prefer.
And then in Florence, I really like Le Volpe e L'Uva. That's a really nice wine bar with, again, a selection from all over Italy. Otherwise, there's Il Santo Bevitore, which is connected to their restaurant. So you could, pop in, have a glass of wine, and then wander over into the restaurant when you're ready to start eating. That would be nice.
And in Venice, there is Vino Vero, which is also very, very good, and we definitely recommend it.
Yeah, just don't ask for spritz there because they absolutely don't serve spritz.
They won't give it to you.
It's kind of like, I think what we need to understand with the spritz is, even though it's super refreshing, like we mentioned at the start, we're not using the best Prosecco. We're using, spritz Prosecco. So it's not really a wine. I mean, it's fine on its own, but it's not for the enjoyment of the wine. It's for the enjoyment of the mix.
True.
Do you know what I heard about the other day? I heard about a Lambrusco spritz.
Oh.
Yeah. That's one for the list for sure. I actually heard about that from Michelle from the Intrepid Guide. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
So there's some great tips. And I think, all those places that Liv and Andrea mentioned, they're used to having visitors from abroad. So they're used to being able to explain the wines in English. And, I think what's really great is that you can do that. But if you really want to have a great exploration of wines, is to actually go out into the countryside and meet some of these winemakers. And it's absolutely astounding. All their stories are so different. Their passion has come from different places, like family, the connection to the land, and it's a really beautiful way to explore Italian culture and something that I'm really passionate about, and that's Live too. That's why, it's an important part of our Untold Italy tours is to go and meet these people and understand at a very deep and sort of intimate level about how they feel about their wine, how important it is to their family and community. And, as Andrea mentioned at the start, they've been making these wines in Italy for 4,000 years. And so I think we probably have a little bit to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, right. So are you going to be, I know it's getting hot there in Rome, and so it's probably perfect weather for some of these wines, actually. Just have instead of a big dinner. Andrea likes a big dinner, but if you weren't feeling too hungry, you can have a aperitivo with some of these wines and like a beautiful board plate of salumi and cheese, and I think that would be lovely.
Delicious. That's us for the summer.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, fabulous. Now, thanks for putting a big dose of sparkle in my day, Liv and Andrea. I have to say, this virtual exploration of Italian sparkling wine is almost as good as it is in person. Now, if our listeners are keen to know a little more about Italian wine, how can they follow what you're doing with Italian Wine Tales?
Thanks, Katie. You can find us online. So the website is italianwinetales.com. We've got Instagram, so that's Italian Wine Tales, or a new Facebook group, Italian Wine Lovers. Otherwise, you can connect with me on Liv Guini or, see me on an Untold Italy tour.
Amazing. And, Andrea will be there with his wonderful Italian accent and his passion for his homeland up in Piemonte, which is, it's really great to have them both in Rome, I have to say. But it's also, I felt so privileged to go and see your hometown, Torino, when I was last there. And, I can definitely see in that city in particular, there's just a totally different culture about food and wine, and totally encourage everyone to go up there. And they take their aperitivo very seriously, as do I. If you like to try a lot of different things, this is a place to go, because antipasti and
appetizers are a big thing there, so look out for them when you order. They also enjoy good wine. As you can imagine, you can try a beautiful vermouth if you like kind of wine. That's where it was invented. You'll have a good time, I'm sure.
You will. Well, we'll have to do the fortified wines at another time. Will you come back and tell us about white wine soon?
Yes.
Why
Yeah,
not?
good idea. So I think we'll talk about white wine, the general famous ones, and then we might go delving into some of the regions and see what we can find. Grazie mille. Thank you for coming on Untold Italy today, Liv and Andrea.
Grazie
Thank you
mille,
for having us.
Katie. Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao.
Okay, everyone, are you ready to put those memories of bad spumanti behind you and try some amazing Italian sparkling wine? Let me tell you, some of these drops really give French champagne a run for its money. Personally, I can't think of a more delicious way to spend a summer afternoon than with a glass of Prosecco and a lovely antipasto plate. But as you heard, I'm a recently converted and slightly obsessed with Lambrusco these days. And you'll always find me raising a glass on those very special occasions with Franciacorta, a very sophisticated sparkling wine. Now, some of those Italian names were a bit tricky, weren't they? But the good news is that we create very detailed show notes with all the Italian names spelt correctly for each and every episode of this podcast. So your first point of call if you have any questions are those show notes, as it is all there for you to read, as well as the places and wines we mentioned. You'll find this week's notes at untolditaly.com/179 for episode 179. Grazie mille. Thanks to all our wonderful listeners for your ongoing support of Untold Italy. I do hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, then it would be amazing if you gave us a rating or review in your favourite podcast app. And if you're using Apple Podcasts, then you need to go to the show page for Untold Italy and scroll down until you see ratings and reviews. And you can leave your 5-star review and message there, which we love reading. Every week we get so many beautiful messages and we really appreciate it. On next week's episode, we're going to talk about how to access special experiences in Italy and really have those dream trips that you're really trying to plan. Some people like to call these experiences authentic, but I have some views on that, which I'm going to share with you. But until then, it's ciao for now.
The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katie Clark. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.